and officially welcome all of you again. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Tina from Permapeople, and I'm hosting this first online event of Permapeople together with Ben and Simon. And yeah, we're going to introduce each other in a minute. But first of all, I would like to have a look at our agenda for today. So Ben already shared our presentation, our slides here. And first of all, we want to introduce ourselves as a team of Permapeople and also our project. So thanks for tuning in and showing interest in our project. And yeah, we'll finally also talk about open data and what kind of role they play in our or on our platform. And finally, want to get into a discussion with you also as participants and exchange ideas, maybe cooperations. What kind of experience do you have in these fields that also address us and our project? Okay, next slide. Yeah, here we are already. And I would like to pass on the word to Ben, who's actually the founder of Permapeople and the team. And before I go on with our presentation.
So hi, also from my side. Thank you for joining. Yeah, I'm Ben, and I started this project, I don't know, almost a year ago, I would say. I will also talk later about when you will see how I started Permapeople from the idea to the actual database and what steps I went through. So you will see a bit more about the very early Permapeople story later. But my background is also was a lot of software engineer and like tons of tech startups in Berlin, switched then later to product, and now got a bit tired of this tech Berlin bubble. So now I want to do something more like meaningful to myself and to the world. So this is why I started Permapeople. Passing on to Simon.
All right. Hey guys, I'm Simon, based in British Columbia. I've been a bit of a permaculture nerd for about the past 10 years. Like Ben, I'm coming from a tech background, doing a lot of that, and was working on some similar ideas to Ben's of the plant database when we met online about half a year ago or so and joined the team. All right.
Yeah, and I am Tina. I'm the member who joined latest last year in November. That was at a time when I just finally submitted my PhD thesis, which was on a completely different topic. It was about cultural memory in Vietnam. And before coming to Permapeople, I worked as a research assistant and lecturer at the University of Bremen in communication and media studies. But we were looking at media technologies more from a social scientific point of view. And yeah, now I'm up to new ventures and also joined Permapeople. Okay, Ben, you can move on to the next slide. Okay, first of all, we want to start out our talk with a quote by Bill Mollison, who's considered one of the founding fathers, actually, of permaculture. And he's driving, or this message is basically also driving our project. And Bill Mollison states that the greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production, even if on a small scale in our own gardens. If only 10% of us do this, there is enough for everyone. Okay, next slide. So what is permaculture actually? We can say that these ideas surrounding permaculture actually have been around forever, since human and civilization basically existed. So essentially, it's a way of seeing the whole system and also yourself as a part of this system. If you look up permaculture on Wikipedia, it is described as an approach to land management and philosophy that adopts arrangements observed in flourishing natural ecosystems. It includes a set of design principles derived using whole systems thinking, and it uses these principles in fields such as regenerative agriculture, rewilding, and community resilience. We also collected or compiled a list of important works and authors. This is collected on the next slide, great. And if you're interested, of course, you can check these authors out. And yeah, since we're recording this presentation, we will also make sure you can make use of it afterwards, or provide this presentation and the information to you in the aftermath. And I see Simon also posted it into the chat, great. Okay, next slide. So what's our mission? Our mission is to use our experience, passion, and also tech expertise to empower people to grow more food by themselves, share it directly with their community, and thus get less dependent on the industrial food system of today. Next slide, please. So there are some problems that we're trying to solve. It's actually very hard to find factual knowledge about regenerative practices and permaculture. In personal conversations with other permaculturists, we've learned that knowledge on permaculture and regenerative practices is often based on personal observation. It's not so much rigorous collection and review of data. It's rather that individual naturalists report their observations as a fact. So in fact, a lot of knowledge on holistic or regenerative gardening is anecdotal. There isn't a lot of funding for research in these areas, and our experience is that if there's funding, it's often by big agricultural companies. So we aim to provide, share, and cite the research that already does exist behind regenerative practices. A second issue is that information on holistic and regenerative practices is widely scattered and often rarely systematized. We brought together a number of sources to make this project happen, from existing plant databases and Wikipedia to cherry picking sources from dozens of seed company websites. Additionally, there are hard to find or out of print books just that are a great resource, but that might be threatened to be lost to the digital age. So that's why we're also investigating the availability of rights on some of these traditional knowledge. And finally, the third issue is that knowledge on permaculture is often dominated by a monoculture. So what we mean by that is that we've observed that most food production, including permaculture and regenerative agriculture, is dominated by Anglophone, white and Western perspectives and industries. And yeah, I guess we cannot really exclude ourselves from that. And we also have to critically reflect on this issue. Okay, I wanted to ask Simon if he wants to add anything to this slide or the issues that we've
Yeah, sure. So one thing that is important to us is the whole idea that food is power. And we think that obviously food is one of the most volatile systems in the world, and yet we leave it in the hands of so few people who've shown to be irresponsibly bent on increasing only inputs and discouraging open pollination, destroying heritage varieties of all sorts of fruit and vegetables. So another question is, how can we address the food system without addressing the monoculture behind it? We're not sure how to get here yet, but maybe we should be elevating some of the less represented voices in the movement. And that's something we're going to try to do.
All right, then we can go on to the next slide then. Yeah, so given these issues that we've talked about on the previous slide, we feel there is a need for sharing scientifically grounded, systematic, applicable, and concentrated knowledge, and also a need for direct distribution and direct trading of products as well as the need for knowledge gathering and all in one platform for everyone to benefit from. So our platform is supposed to work as a feedback loop of knowledge production and gathering, which is also expressed in our slogan that you see on the slide: research, grow, harvest, trade, surplus, share knowledge, and repeat. Next slide, please. So that is why we want to provide open source information and tools that can empower anyone who has the interest and means to grow something. We also want to encourage regenerative action. And what we mean by regenerative is the agenda to go beyond sustainability, because sustaining only means to keep a broken system running, right? So the regenerative movement takes an active stance and aiming at fixing our soils, food, nature, and ultimately our communities and the planet as a whole. So post-capitalism is listed here as another goal. However, we believe that we can work with the current system to regenerate wealth and power through hyper-localized natural goods production, as for instance in sharing and trading surplus with your neighbors, trading seeds, planting public food, reconnecting and building a flourishing community. Okay, so let me walk you through some of the basic elements and functions of our Permapeople platform. And I need Ben to switch to the next slide for that. Okay, there you see our landing page and basically the core of our project, which is the plant database. It currently contains more than 8,500 plant entries. And on our landing page, you can basically type in any plant term you are looking for, including in Latin, English, or even German names, as two of us are based in Germany. And yeah, you could also, for example, just type in the term bean, and it will show you all entries containing the term. I made a screenshot of that, and then if you click next, then it should show up. Yeah, so here I just typed in a very general term. And yeah, I was a little bit surprised that a lot of entries actually seem to contain this term. But what happens is that if you choose a general term and you get a lot of search results, you can also refine this search using the sidebar and the filters that are located there. You could, for instance, yeah, search or refine the filters according to hardiness zone or utility, water requirements. Yeah, a lot of options there. Okay, technically anyone can use the search functions of the plant database, and you don't even have to sign up or create an account for doing that. So this is very easy accessible. If you do not find a plant that you're looking for, you can also add an entry, a new entry, and you see that field at the upper left corner, add a new plant. And here you can also directly contribute to the platform and the database. But to use that function, you will have to sign up eventually and make changes or contributions. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here I selected one specific plant profile for you. I've chosen the broad bean, as I'm currently growing this plant myself, and I also contributed to this plant entry, adding some data. And first of all, you basically see the English name and then the Latin name, and also the images or the image that we imported from Wikipedia. Then if you click further, I've also highlighted the parts of the page that I'm talking about right now. In the sidebar, you see the characteristics or all the data that we've collected from various sources. It includes edible parts, utility, hardiness zone, life cycle, water requirement, and the sidebar or the list actually goes on as you scroll down further. So below the picture, you will find another part of the website that basically shows one of the main characteristics and categories that we find very important to see at first sight, and that's why they have also these graphic icons. Okay, and below that is also another bar that contains further figures, for instance, on how many people of the Permapeople community have the plant as their favorite, or whether they commented on it. And where you see the figure 4 is indicates how many people included the plant in their own lists. So you can also create your own lists of plants that you're growing, or lists of guilds that you find practical to work with. And finally, there's also an icon that shows whether the plant is offered in the marketplace or not, marketplace that is also connected to our platform. And on the very right side is a drop-down menu that allows you to add the plant to the list you might want to create. Okay, and the final slide for our plant profiles. If you scroll down on the plant profile, you'll see a more detailed description on the plant. So in this case, the broadbean, and users and members of Permapeople can actually also edit these descriptions and all the data that are given in this plant entry. And so this is the kind of Wikipedia principle that we are following here. And as another element on the website, we've also added plant relationships, which is particularly relevant for permaculture, or an important element within that philosophy, because from that information you can basically take away what kind of plants are easy to combine, or what kind of plants you should not plant next to each other. Okay, so this is the first overview of our plant database and its functions. And now I want to pass the word to Ben, who's gonna talk a little bit more about the data side of Permapeople. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina, for giving us this intro to our mission and how the page actually looks like. So I really urge you to check it out. I want to dive now a bit more into how we actually use open data at Permapeople and how we got there. I told you before, I will give you a small intro how I started, and it all started like this. It was like around, I don't know, 4 years ago, when my grandpa gave me 2 potatoes and thought, yeah, here, these are like potatoes you can grow, because like normally, you know, you cannot grow the potatoes in the supermarket because they're like treated with some material. So I thought, okay, let's do this. And I had like no clue what I was doing. So I just bought some soil and we just put these 2 potatoes in this IKEA bag, because this is what we had back then, on our balcony, and actually turned out pretty well. We had like 3 kilograms of potatoes, and I think from this point we were like, that's awesome. That's like, let's grow more of our own food. And then also like really got me that like, why should we like spend like these immense amounts of resources on producing food, shipping it around the world, so you can go to a supermarket and buy it for the money you just earns in some kind of another job. And this is like how I then started thinking more about this. And I started a lot of reading about this. So, and it's like, obviously, if you start really digging into this, you will stumble over the term permaculture. And I found it, like, when I started reading it, very interesting. And since I had no idea what to do, I just started watching YouTube videos of gardeners. I think there are like tons of great YouTube videos out there, like from super high level theories to really just how to grow like carrots on your balcony or something. And then one garden of this recommended this book, if you want to go more into permaculture, and I just bought it. And when I read this book, it somehow hit me that There are so many obvious things in permaculture which I never thought about, which would like make like total sense to me. Like for example, you don't need to till the soil, right? You just like even like nature is not doing this, like a forest which has like the most fertile soil you can get. Like no one is ever tilling the soil in the forest, right? You just like it's just like keep adding leaves and other organic litter on top, and it's like the best soil ever. So I was like, yeah, that's like it's totally making sense. Why do people still till their soil? And then I like also like completely stopped doing these kind of things. And the garden we have right now is just like this rented area. It's like super poor soil. And since then, since I read this book, I just like keep adding compost or whatever I find. Sometimes we just grab leaves from the park in autumn, just add this to the top in the hope to improve the soil. But I think the biggest problem is when you really like Google for things like permaculture traits, like really say, okay, what plants can I grow next to my already existing, apple tree? It's actually really hard to find, and you do some really random Googling and you find like blogs and some scattered info here and there, or you also find sometimes kind of databasey things, but they are not really focused on permaculture. So you're really sitting down and combining all this information all the time again. And I was like, really like, actually, like I want a garden, right? I don't want to like search all this information. Why is there not some site where I can just say permaculture, give me this and this, and then I know how to like grow things together and combine these things? But there was no such thing. And I think my first starting point was then at the back of this book of Toby Hemingway, Gaia's Garden. It's like a super famous book, I think, in permaculture. There's like tons of lists of plants you can grow. And I want to make them filterable because I want to search through, okay, I can see, give me a plant which has fruits, but it's also good for soil and also creates a lot of mulch from the leaves. And this was like hard to do. So I really like went down and typed all these plant lists into a spreadsheet. Like there's an Airtable spreadsheet. Airtable is also just a service you can use for creating like fancy spreadsheets. And then with this I could make it filterable. And after some time I was thinking, like, if people like me starting to get into permaculture need to do this over and over again, it's like crazy. It's like so much waste of time. So I was thinking of how can I use this and put this online. And the idea was there also, like, I don't know everything. No one knows everything. Everyone just like researches their bits of what they actually want to do. So I was thinking about, let's do something like Wikipedia. It was just like for permaculture plants. This was my idea. I actually was thinking also a bit about Discogs. It's, I don't know if you know Discogs. It's like basically a big database for records, but it's the same idea, right? People can add to it, can add images to records and all these kind of things. And I thought, let's do just like that for plants. And then I started really to search for existing databases, because I thought I don't want to build anything which is already existing. And to my surprise, I couldn't like find anything. There was no open database where I could really like search by permaculture traits. And it was like really well maintained. This was not like someone did this once and then forgot about it, but it was really like well maintained by a community. So the closest I could find is Plants for Future. And I think if you're a bit into permaculture, you will know this page. And they have around 7,000 plants in their database, which have already similar traits we are looking for, right? They have like the USDA hardiness zones, can you eat it, can you use it for other things? So, but the problem here is also this is like maintained by a closed group. Like I don't even know who these people are, how they operate, will they update stuff, and things like that, and how did they get to this information? So I had the idea to just like combine all these things together and create basically a database I would have wanted to use when I started gardening and when I planned out my gardening. So then I was in forums and other boards and on Reddit and like checked really everything. This is also, by the way, where I met Simon. This was actually pretty early on. I'm pretty happy about this because we wouldn't be there where we are right now. So, and then we started like to assemble all these things. And I think the cool thing about Plans for the Future is, which I saw very early on, it's like a Creative Commons license, right? So it's really clearly you can use the data for if you stay in the license, you can reuse it. And the same for Wikipedia. So the idea was we will just combine this all in a new website, but then people can actually go there and edit stuff, because you cannot edit stuff for Plans for Future. If you find something wrong in Plans for Future, you can be sure that the next 100 people looking at it will find the same problem. So then we started combining it in the website, and I think it's probably running since, I don't know, more than a half a year. We have the prototype running, people start editing. So currently, if you look like now at the current distribution by data source, we have like, we took like the Plans for Future data set as a base, and it's like 58% of all edits and data is from Plans for Future. And 30% is Wikipedia data. From Wikipedia, we mostly just use the images. So we wrote a script of, this is the plant name, is there a Wikipedia article? If there is a Wikipedia article, is there an image? If yes, then import this image. And another 11% now already is provided by the people, like by contributors on Permapeople. And when I pulled up these numbers, I was actually like super surprised that this number of real contributions through Permapeople is already that high. So like we created already like 10% more valuable data than all the other databases have, right? So in the best case, and it's also the cool thing about open license data, because also Permapeople is Creative Commons licensed, we can give this data back to either Wikipedia or Plans for Future. That would be like super cool to do. And now in March, this is the current like stats we have in the database. So with 21 contributors, like this is someone who signed up and made at least one edit at a plant profile, might be just adding a picture, might be adding 10 new plants. But this is what we classify as a contributor. And we have 8,500 plants, a bit more, and we have almost 5,000 images. And like all the edits, like you see, it's like a lot of edits, but also includes automated edits. I will talk about this later a bit more, but as I said, I wrote a lot of scripts which run and to import data or to change the data to make it actually better accessible. And I think that's an important thing Tina talked about before, is like Plans for the Future is nice and all of that, and also a lot of other platforms, but they are all like really hard to search. And I wanted to have really cool search where I can really like filter to the specific trait you need, because if you design a permaculture garden, you will end up being like very constrained, right? Because you have already some perennials in this specific bed, and you want to really find the last plant who fills out the trait, because you know permaculture is a lot about having this multi-functions in a guild or something like that. So you really always need to narrow it down to a very specific plant. Plus, I forgot to say this before, and also Tina mentioned this, is like most of the things, especially also if you read like Gaia's Garden, it's like for North America, right? Like all plants, Hemingway writes in his book is native to North America, and you don't want to like import non-native plants and grow them in your garden. You want to find some like native plants, and then finding the equivalent to this plant mentioned there is like also some hard thing to do, which we want to change with Permapeople. Let's talk now a bit about the challenges we discovered on our way to where we are right now and how we think about them. Just a disclaimer, these are most of the things is also like work in progress. It's not like we like solved it, but it's just like for you to get an idea what problems we run into, which you might run into too if you want to work with open data. And I think one of the most obvious problems is what license. Like you come to a website, you say, oh great, I want to use this somehow. What is the actual license? Under what requirements can I use these things? And this is also what happened so many times for me when I was searching for plant data, is that you find something and you have no idea how is it licensed and how you can use it. So there's many things I just didn't use because I wasn't sure about the license. And what we also did, we reached out to to the makers of this website. We almost get never a response. How under which requirements we can use the data. This also happens for like commercial databases. There are like commercial databases which give you access, but then don't say anything how you, in what context you're actually allowed to use the data besides like looking at it by yourself. And I think another huge problem I saw, especially for us, was you always need someone who can program, right? I mean, I can program a bit, so it was like easy for me to do this kind of job. But I was thinking about if a person who doesn't have any programming skills wants to use this kind of data in any other way, it would be just impossible. And while many pages then have a license, they don't have any way of exporting this. This also goes for plans for future. There's like no export or anything. So I fell back to the worst case and wrote a scraper. So basically I have a script being like a browser, reading all the HTML pages and then trying to extract information for Permapeople and make them searchable in Permapeople. So I think a solution there is what we're also working on is having an API, like Wikipedia does it on the other side really good. You have an API, you can query a lot, you can find all the information you want. It's a really cool thing. So we also want to have some kind of API and also provide like export formats. I think if anyone who has like open license data also has a download button, just saying download all the data as a CSV or whatever our format is, that would be already like so much more helpful for people. I mean, I'm also thinking, I want Permapeople to be a CSV file, right? People can download it, they can export it in whatever tool they want to use and can do whatever they want with it. I think that would be great, great thing to do, because this is what we want to do. We want people, help people with this data to grow more plants. And I think another thing we for sure didn't solve yet is what actually license you should use for data. And I don't know if you remember or if you know OpenStreetMap, and I was part of the community. I don't know when it was, like 10 years ago, because they also started with Creative Commons, and then they run into this problem that actually you cannot really use Creative Commons for like a facts-based data set, right? Because Creative Commons based on copyright means like you created something and then you put a copyright on it, but you cannot copyright a fact, right? We cannot copyright the name of a plant. Like if Tina showed broad bean, you cannot copyright broad bean as a term. So it's a bit of a problem if you want to use Creative Commons for such things. And we need to look into how we fix that. And I mean, OpenStreetMap, what they did that in the end, they created their own license, this open database license. And this is also something for us we need to look into if there's something we can move to and things like that. But I mean, then we start with way more problems because our license is compatible, right? Can you just say, okay, Creative Commons somehow compatible with the open database license and things like that. So it's also like all the stuff we need to figure out. And I'm not a lawyer. So let's see how this goes. But beside all the challenge, we also see and had a lot of opportunities. And I think one thing most people are scared of or see this is a challenge or it's like something bad, is like it's actually more easy for people to copy your data or to copy your work. I think for me or for us in general, it's like it would be cool if it would be more easy to copy Permapeople data set to somewhere else to create even more solutions to do that. I mean, we did the same. We copied Plans for Future, we copied Wikipedia, combined it to a new solution, which is more specific to the problems we wanted to solve. And I think that's like also then the true sense of sharing, right? You give something, you get something, you give something back, and this also goes. So, I mean, I think it would be really cool to see people like asking for, where can I download all the Permapeople data set? I would be super excited to see what they build with. And I think also then this other thing, which we did already, I would love to see also more, is like this data mashup thing where you use like different data sources and just like combine them to something more valuable for people, whatever the solutions is they're looking for. And another thing we're planning, and I think it's also a great opportunity for open license data, is like user-generated data. So what we're planning for Permapeople is next step is creating some kind of garden planner and log where people can actually log their activities in the garden. So imagine I would log today, I started my chili seeds today, and then I can log in, I don't know, 180 days, I harvested the chili today. If a lot of people do that, you can, and they also opt in for sharing this data, you could use this data back in a database and would show it the chili plant days to harvest 180 days. So you would create even like more data out of the people usage. And I think that's the win-win situation we're looking for. So actually having valuable data, which like gives value to the people, but then also brings it back to the data set and to whoever uses the data. And another thing, I think it's also an opportunity, but it's also like something a bit like we need to be careful of to stay in the perspective. I want to explain this with an example, and I don't know if you know Maslow's hierarchy. It's like basically just a simple idea that you need to fulfill your most basic needs first before you think about more higher level things. Like you need to think about what to eat. You cannot create like poetry or anything if you're like really worried about where to eat and sleep at night. So you need to fulfill these things first before you can think about that. And I think the same goes for data and the things we are doing, right? Because while we need data to provide and to help people with like growing more food and help fixing the food system, data is not the actual thing we want to do, right? It's not like we want to spend time creating data and working on data. The actual thing is we want to help people growing more food. So how can we actually do this is we need to use this data to provide like useful tools around that so people can solve the problems they have. And I think this is also something we figured out very early on, that with the database, it was like, we had this database, first version of the database running, and then we were like, hey people, please add your info there. And we had very little return on that. But I think the more we thought about it and the more features we added, for example, we have now lists and other features where you can like organize your plans, and we have this marketplace, like you see a lot more traction, but it's like all based on this data backbone we created initially. And now we need to just find a way, a feedback loop to get this back. And I think for us, just to sum it up, it's we don't want to do data gardening. We don't want to work on the data, right? We want to do gardening. We want to grow our own food. And I'm sure you also have some problem you want to solve with data, which is beside the actual data. So what's next for open data for us is, as I said already, it's the public API. I think that's one of the most critical things, because then people can build whatever solution we cannot. So I mean, we also like have limited resources, but we see a lot of requests of people, can you do this, can you do that? And like we cannot, but we're happily providing you the API to do that. I mean, there are like apps like plant identifiers and things like that, and other planning apps. So it would be great if they could use the Permapeople data set. A database export, as I said already, just like a simple download button where you can download it in some kind of machine readable format, or like some CSV or Excel sheet would be great. And one thing I would also want to see is this fine-grained licensing info, because if you now look at the plant profile, like Tina showed it before, it's very hard to see where is this data coming from, how is it licensed, because like stitched up together as many data resources, right? Sometimes it's Wikipedia, sometimes it's Plans for Future where we know the license. Sometimes it's a seeds company website where they say this is the data for the seeds, and we have no idea if we can use this or not, which means it's copyrighted. So we just need to make sure to make it really clear to our users that like what the license of this actual data is. And this is also like creating more awareness, right? You can say, okay, here you see, this is the data which is actually freely available and let's say verified by the following resources. This is the data which is copyrighted, just written in this one seed shop. We have no idea if this is true or not. So it's something also we need to figure out. And last is like make it easy to link and cite Permapeople. I think that's also I think a general problem in the web also. It's like linking and everything is like easy to make, but not really, you cannot really trace back where this information actually came from. So I think, at least from our side, we can make sure that people like are aware how to properly cite and link back to Permapeople to make sure that this information is verifiable. And we got this request a lot. For example, what Tina showed before with the companion plans, right? We say, okay, this plan is a good companion plan to that plan. But then the people was asking, yeah, why is that like that? And where did you read that? And I think it's important to show also, we have this information in the database only because it was written by this one individual on this and this website, or we can verify this specific companion planting through 50 different sources. I think this also says already much more about the value of this data in this case. And I hope I did not forget anything, but that's about it. So thank you very much for your attention. And I think if you want to help, and if you ask us how you can help, I think it's just like, should first and foremost start gardening and start to grow your own plants. I think it's like a magical moment when the first time you harvest something, you grow by yourself and eat it. I think a tomato you grew by yourself, it has a very different taste than any tomato you bought before that. And beside that, yeah, like just share Permapeople with you and your community and sign up and start contributing. I think now we can stop. I will hand over to Tina, so she can lead the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ben, for the data insights. Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording now so we can directly tune into the discussion.